But thank you for all for joining. Looks like we got about 20, which is exactly what we were hoping. So this is the September Dr. NAACLS about Standard IV. Let's get started. So what we like to mention at the top of this every time is that we like to date stamp this. Since we are making Dr. NAACLS available on the website through the NAACLS News and through our YouTube page, we like to make sure that we timestamp these a little bit, because those of you who have been program directors for a little while know that our documents can change, our standards can change, our compliance issues can change, and things of that nature. So if you are watching this in a more on-demand capability, please double in the future, whether it be a year from now, 6 months from now, please double check with staff and the website that you are looking at the up-to-date documents. I will introduce today's team, and then Candy and Jesse, if you want to kind of say a little bit about yourself. Our content expert today is Candy Grayson. Candy, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Candice Grayson. I am a director for histotechnology and medical laboratory technology programs at the Community College of Baltimore County in Baltimore, Maryland. And I am a member of RCAP as an MLT educator. And
Hi.
I've served, I'm so sorry, Jess.
Oh, go ahead, talk all you want, Candy. That takes the spotlight off of me.
I have served on the committee, but I've also done self-studies and site visits since both my programs went through initial accreditation. As soon as that was completed, I jumped on as a volunteer and have been involved in NAACLS in different aspects. Now I'm done.
Sorry. Hi, I'm Jessie. I'm a program accreditation coordinator and the review liaison. Probably quite a few of you joining us have, emailed with me just regarding applications or whatnot. I also manage the HT, HTL, PATH-A, DMS, and CG program, apart from, off-cycle duties.
And my name is Mark Spence. I work with PARC and the DRC, and also that means phlebotomy and clinical assistant program directors, as well as the DCLS programs, as well as a variety of other responsibilities when it comes to policies and procedures. So the topic today, and if this is your first Dr. NAACLS, generally what we do is we start with a general topic that staff and our volunteers feel is timely and beneficial for program directors to just have a casual conversation about, and then we will go to a Q&A. The Q&A can be about anything in general, it does not have to be about the topic. So today's topic is Standard 4A, specifically what NAACLS requires for publications. Standard 4A is one of our most consistently cited standards over the last 3 or 4 years. That's why we kind of thought it would be a good idea to bring in Candy, who is a member of RCAP and a very experienced self-study reviewer and site visitor, and she can discuss her experience reviewing 4A. She's also a program director, so she can speak to that if she wishes. And then staff can talk a little bit about a specific part of 4A that's a bit different than from our normal standards. So we will put a pin in that, and I will just hand it off to Candy to talk about reviewing 4A, specifically 4A1, and kind of consistent problems she sees with that. Go ahead, Candy.
Sure. So 4A, just to start, it does say that there's a listing of publications and disclosures that have to be defined, published, and readily available to prospective and enrolled students. And it's that prospective students that we tend to see programs get hung up on. Some of those documents that are listed are your mission, your goals, your courses, your faculty, your clinical sites, tuitions, what have you. And a lot of those items we already place within our manuals, our student or our program manuals. And we give those to students when they start the program, maybe at an orientation. And that will address the current enrolled students, but it's the prospective students that we need to make sure that we're watching out for. And that is one of the things that we run into a lot of concerns or problems within the standards. Some of the ways that you can consider how to address the prospective students, and I'm referring often when I talk, I always refer back to the compliance guide that's on the NAACLS website. It is a wonderful resource. And within that compliance guideline, it does remind you that there are different ways that you can address this. You can simply provide an information packet when you are advising students. You can have a note on your website that says program manual, policies, what have you, are available upon request. Or you can also list them all on your website and refer to everyone to that website. It really does depend, and you want to work within your institution. Where one of the nice things with NAACLS is it isn't so prescriptive, and it understands that maybe your institution, you can't readily change items on your website. But you want to be able to still make sure you're addressing how do you get these defined items to the public. And at least if you put a statement out there that says manual or the documentation available upon request, you're addressing that prospective student. Some of the things to consider and some of the things we often see that are missed, the mission, the courses, you can find them generally within your catalog, or you can find them within the website. But sometimes we forget that we also need very specific policies within that standard. And some of those specific policies are the clinical assignment, specifically when placement cannot be guaranteed. That's one of those items that needs to be available to prospective and currently enrolled students. Again, the current, you probably have a manual, but it's making sure that you're addressing or linking it somehow to that prospective student. Should I pause here for questions? Since I kind of just
we'll go to questions a little bit, but
Sure.
Jesse, did you have anything to add to that you've seen from a staff perspective or communication with program directors that you've kind of seen ways that they've addressed this?
I mean, Candy did such a great job. To be quite honest, no. People do ask those questions, and as long as it's readily available, like she said, we understand that sometimes you can't always update the website, but if it's available upon request, that's a great way, to start.
Mm-hmm.
And make sure that you publicize somewhere how it's available upon request.
Yes.
You need to have, with both responding to the standard, but also internal mechanisms, you want to make sure that you know what's that pathway. Is it that you direct students on a website? Is it that you provide a packet when they are counseled by maybe an advisor or some type of enroll or registrar information? Where are you giving that information to? If I may, there's, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Candy.
If I may, there's one also additional piece within this standard 4A. It's not just the prospective student, but also within that standard, it does talk about having a policy and procedure for service work and a policy and procedure for clinical placement. And you want to make sure that both of those are also addressed. And again, that's one of the areas that someone might get a little bit of confusion or frustration. That service work has to do with being able to make sure that you're not using them as an employee, that they're not, are they being regulated before they're doing work, and how that whole thing, are you doing it outside of hours? It's all those aspects addressing to it. And the clinical placement, I'm sure, thanks to COVID, we all have that now. What is your policy? Who are you going to, if you only have 10 sites, but you have 20 students? Who goes to the 10 first? How do you do that? You want to make sure that, again, it is something that is written and defined. I'm done.
So one thing I want to bring up, since especially I think it was very beneficial that both you, Jesse, and Candy were talking about ways to meet the standard without a website. It's good to point out that websites aren't required by NAACLS, but the information is readily available. And I remember sitting in a park meeting, seeing and having park discuss a program that actually did a very good job, that they didn't have a website, but they had their policy of if a student called about a program, they would always get the email of that student, and after every call, follow up with all of this information. And not only did they give us that policy, but then they provided documentation that they actually did that. So the reason I bring that up is, I mean, as we've all heard in some form, and that I've learned from working with laboratorians, both as my boss and as volunteers, if it's not documented, it's not done. So if you do have, especially if you are in a position where you don't have a website and you do have these alternative ways to satisfy the standard, make sure that you not only have a narrative of how you meet it, but then examples providing how you are following up on that narrative.
Exactly.
I see somebody in the chat, one second. So let's talk about 4A1D. I apologize for my standard that I apologize for my typo that says 5A1D. It is 4A1D. These are your outcomes that need to be readily available on your website. This standard is treated a bit differently than the rest of 4A, and quite honestly, the rest of our standards in general. For those of you who don't know, NAACLS also has a quality assurance organization we answer to. It's the Council for Higher Education and Accreditation, CHIA. CHIA, over the last 5 years, has put a focus on transparency of information for students, for the public at large, I'm sorry. So they require us to make sure that our accredited programs have outcomes for the students that are readily available. And the reason I bring this up here is that this is something that falls outside of the review cycle of our content experts. And this is something staff checks on at least once a year. We go through every program and the website you give us at least once a year to make sure your outcomes are readily available. Some recent news on it. Some of you may have gotten an email from us that said, hey, your outcomes aren't readily available. You need to make these changes, and then we give you a timeline. CHIA is going through a current set of standards changes that I think is very likely that will be approved. And they are setting a compliance issue of that your outcomes have to be readily available within one click of your program's homepage. They also allow for programs that don't have a website. So they're not mandating programs to have a website, but I bring it up because of the importance of outcomes being within that one click of the homepage, because very similar to your programs having to work with NAACLS standards, now that CHIA is making this requirement of us, we need to be in compliance with that. And so what does readily available mean, which is something I always ask, and we at NAACLS use that same language. Specifically in the case of 4A1D, I'll always remember this example a CHIA staff's member used, is that if there is a family member of somebody who is going to college, they used Aunt Jane. And Aunt Jane's nephew is going to college, and Aunt Jane wants to make sure that the program they're going through, their nephew is going to, is of a high quality. And they go to this program's website and they want to find the outcomes. Can Aunt Jane, or a person who is outside of academia and may not be familiar with the common terms, the common layouts of school websites, can they navigate a website to find the information they need? So I bring that up because that is the standard that I think is very likely that NAACLS will be held to, and that means those are the kind that will affect the outcome standard specifically. So keep an eye on the NAACLS news for specific developments with that, but I do think it is a foregone conclusion that that will be kind of the parameters that we will all be working with in the near future. One more thing before we open it up to Q&A. Sorry, Candy and Jesse, do we have anything else to mention specifically about 4A before we get to question and answers?
I think I would just piggyback as someone who is a self-study site visitor, that your outcomes that are published, if they are a different format than what you fill out on those self-studies, just as someone who's reviewing, make sure that there's some type of discussion of why the numbers are different, because then we're always wondering, so how many people really were in your program? And we know that the reasons that they might be different is your date ranges. Maybe you have a different cohort number, or maybe a student came back at some point, or they waited, because sometimes they do. But just make sure that that document of what you're posting and then what you're providing later on under Standard 2, that there's just some connection to it or some understanding of what the differences are. I think that's one of the comments that you often might see in a self-study of, the numbers don't look right. Why do the numbers not look right?
All right, that's a great piece of advice. Let's go to the general Q&A. Before we do, let's real quick, this is a good place to mention our discipline lead people, or DLPs. These are volunteers that are members of our review committees that specifically are there to help you with standard interpretation. Their information is on the website. NAACLS staff our expertise is policy and procedure. You can always contact us if you have questions. We're the paid staff, so it's no problem for you to contact us first, but we aren't educators and we don't have that laboratory background except for Dr. Carolog, our CEO. So if you have questions about standard interpretation and those type of items, these are the people you would want to contact. Their contact information is on the program director's page of our website. So yeah, I think this is a underused resource of NAACLS, so I just like to mention this whenever the opportunity arises. So now we will go to some Q&A. See if we have any questions.
So there's one in the chat that I can answer. It was the question of, did you say that service work and unavailable clinical sites policy must be posted to prospective students on the program webpage? They need to be available to prospective students. Now, whether you post them on your program webpage, that is your discussion. But as we stated, it is one of the policies and procedures that need to be defined, published, and available to prospective students. So if you don't do it on your webpage, how do you do it? Do you state that that piece is provided in an information packet? Is that piece part of an advising council? Is it available upon request if the student asks to see it? You just need to be able to make sure that you're defining, publishing, and making it available to them in some respect. So yes, but not necessarily the web page. I don't know if that helps.
Liz, I see your question. I will follow up with IT about the outcomes report to make sure that that is up to date.
Okay, because I didn't know what that was.
Broken link.
Yeah. So we can also take questions by if you raise your hand, not literally like I just did, but over the virtual medium, and then I can go ahead and give you permission to talk. This is an item. Oh, Patricia just did. Great. 1 second. You should be ready to go, Patricia, but you are on mute. There you go.
Yeah, I was wondering, so as of July 1st, all higher education institutes that receive federal financial aid are required to inform prospective students about if their degree program will qualify to work in the state where they are located. And there's a thread about this like on the clinical lab educators listserv. And do you foresee that becoming something that NAACLS will be requiring? And then my other question about that was like, for hospital-based programs, does it seem like that's something that they would have to do versus a degree program?
So I haven't heard this question before, so let me repeat it back to you to make sure I get the gist of it. So you are reporting to a regulator to verify that the degree you're offering allows students to operate within the state. Is that correct?
So Patricia, if I may clarify for Mark, recently on the listserv, there's been a lot of conversation about a regulation within higher education of anyone who receives federal funding. So if there's Pell eligible, is that correct, Patricia? That they would have to state whether their degree in that state provides them with the ability to qualify for licensure or certification. Is that how I'm understanding it?
Yeah, I mean, that's my understanding as well. I am in a hospital-based program, so that doesn't, as far as I know, we don't receive any federal funding financial aid, so it's not something I'm terribly worried about, but I know a lot of institutions were putting on their website, like you can't make it something to, you can't just say, oh, it's up to a student to look up and understand what each state's requirement is. Rather, like the program should be publishing that kind of thing.
I would say, without knowing the regulator specific requirements about or definitions of allowing students to work in the state, that is the role of NAACLS. Like being NAACLS accredited enables you to demonstrate that. You know, if you are accredited, it provides direct path to ASCP BOC certification. In states that do offer licensure, it's generally a qualification pathway, but again, those vary by state. So I don't think that would be something NAACLS would require, because as I understand it, NAACLS would go pretty far to demonstrate that compliance.
Okay.
Does that sound accurate at all, Candy? Or am I over my skis?
I think, and I believe someone in the chat has further stated, again, it was for whether I live in Maryland, and if my students graduate in Maryland, are they eligible for licensure in Hawaii, for example? And I believe that's one of the big listserv questions was who has to do this and has everybody heard about it? And there was debate whether hospital programs that don't receive that funding have an educational institution like a college per se, a brick and mortar college type versus a hospital institution. Are they going to need that regulation as well? And I apologize. Unfortunately, part of what Patricia was saying was very difficult, so I couldn't hear the whole thing. But I think that was the conversation that's been going on in the listserv and just making people aware. And I saw that conversation too and went back and started to talk to people here at my college because I want to make sure I'm covered.
Yeah, I remember that. I mean, for those of you, if you're curious, NAACLS staff does monitor the listserv just so we can stay on top of trends. We've been kind of in, we're all leaving tomorrow for Savannah for a board of directors meeting, so that may have prepped for that, may have had me miss that conversation, but I think I get the gist now. Looks like we have, let me see, I'm reading, Suzanne Campbell just offered something in the chat. I'm looking to see if that was an answer or another question. Oh, that's another reference, kind of just, oh, Suzanne raised her hand. I'll allow you to talk. Go ahead, Suzanne.
Good afternoon, everybody. We've been an online MLT program for quite a few years now, and this is a new regulation. If you're part of NC-SARA, the state authorized reciprocity authority, that all of our programs, so our nursing is a traditional on campus, but we are to make every attempt to discern whether our graduates who are licensed, such as nurses in the state of Kansas, if they're eligible for licensure or practice in other states. And that's kind of a sticky thing with medical laboratory science because not all states are licensed. But for us, it's an NC-SARA parameter that we have to meet and attempt to be in compliance with. So I just want to offer that.
And it looks like someone put in the chat room a helpful link to show all of them within their program.
That's great. I was a bit stumped. It's always good to know that. I've been here for over 15 years. It's good to, after hearing very common questions, such as a question about 4A1, it's good to be caught off guard, keep me on my toes. Terry, I do see you had a question regarding or a comment regarding clinical facility checkboxes on the site visit review form and the self-study review form, I can go ahead and pass that along to RCAP. I do know RCAP has been working hard to revising those forms and adding NA boxes. So that may be happening coincidentally anyway, but I'll follow up on that. Any other questions? Got from Liz Johnson. Go ahead, unmute. There you go, Liz.
Yeah, I'm curious how often we have to update those transparency statistics, you know, like our board pass rates, attrition, whatnot. Because sometimes it's kind of hard to get that done in a timely manner with the people that are in charge of our web page.
Yeah. I think we're looking to have those available up-to-date information. So I would say at least on an annual basis when you have, at least right now, the way the standard is written, just make sure that that data is available for the most recent data you have. We don't have hard and fast parameters for that because I think we want to keep that a bit flexible for reasons you just stated. But I think if it's within the last calendar year, as close as you can to having the information on your website that you supplied for the annual survey,
report.
that would be a good tactic.
Okay, thank you. That's my question.
Because you do have to provide the link and verify items on that annual report.
Mhm.
So that would align.
Does anyone ever have any other questions?
Comments, clarifications, bribes? Sorry.
Well, if not, I think we can wrap up this session. Thank you for everybody for your patience in getting started. That is my mistake. I am suffering from jet lag. I flew in from Europe this weekend, so I forgot to hit a button. I thought there was nobody showing up. And
Wait a minute, there's a question.
oh, we do have a question. Great. I don't have to. What's the most commonly missed item in the section? If you give me a second.
I was going to say, I'm sure that they have actual data, but as far as just experiential data, I can say that usually it's that J, which is the service work, or K2, which is the clinical assignment, and having that available to prospective students. Most people, as I said, have all those items. They have them all in place, but it's making sure how is it to the prospective student.
Yeah, give me a second. I can kind of eyeball our stats on this. A lot of screens and windows happening right now. There we go.
I mean, we all have pretty thick program manuals that we just keep adding stuff to. And COVID's probably added some more stuff that we've put in our program manuals. But making sure it's that perspective piece while they're looking.
It is 4A1D.
Oh, the outcomes, yes.
Yeah, that is the most. And after that, it is 4A1E after that, which is
List of clinical facilities.
So those are those cited among the specifically cited in 4A1. So
you're referring to then the final report, correct? Whereas I'm thinking self-study,
yes,
site visit.
yes.
Okay.
These
I was going to say I'm really off, but I'm not off.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's a good point. Very likely in the concerns in the site visit, they're probably different, and they're, for whatever reason, it's the outcomes and the clinical facilities that that linger for whatever reason.
think
We
there's
have
a
a question
hand.
up. Is it the same? Barbara, did you just ask that question or is this a new question? I'll allow you to talk and you can let me know. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I saw Barbara's hand up. I don't know if.
Yeah.
This is Barbara Cry. That's a new
Yeah.
question, kind of referring to what you've said about communicating the outcomes to the public.
Yeah.
We are probably one of those who are communicating our numbers slightly different to the public than we are to the NAACLS. And the reason being is that, since before my time here in Norfolk, we've always communicated those outcomes per year. So we communicate pass rates and attrition and graduation for all students who graduating in a given year, which we have 3 graduation dates, but most of our students graduate in December. So where do you suggest we should be clarifying that when we are submitting the annual survey to the NAACLS? We should explain that what we are entering into the NAACLS rubric is different from what the public is seeing? Or what do you suggest? Do you suggest that we change that whole thing so that it is identical? Or what do you mean by saying we have to clarify? Where is the clarification? Where does it belong?
I think that's a follow-up to your question, Candy, or
So-
reference in the self-study.
So as far as the standard goes, if you're completing your self-study or when you're involved in your site visit, I would make sure that that is stated there in that narrative, the differences between your published, which would probably, it sounds like your website, and what you're monitoring on the the actual form that you provide for NAACLS. I'm sure also, and I would ask, is that also how it's conveyed to your advisory board? That maybe you state that there's a difference between what might be published and what you're sharing with them as your outcomes?
Absolutely, absolutely. Our advisory is well aware of that.
So again, you have a nice additional documentation trail that you could refer back to your advisory board minutes. As far as filling out the annual survey, I do believe there's a comment field as well that you could just simply state it there. And if I'm incorrect, I'm sure Mark and Jesse will jump in. But you might just want to be able to put it in as many places as possible along with your numbers, just to clarify it when you're reporting things back to NAACLS.
Okay.
Because there's so many people that look at all of the data points. I mean, when you consider that when you're going up for accreditation, you have a self-study, you have site visitors, you have then RCAP, which reviews it, and then a quality control check. And then when you're completing your survey, there's several members on the NAACLS sides that's looking at it. The best that you can do is making sure that you've got it consistent and clarified.
Well, this has never been, never been a problem for us. So.
And you know what? It's always that one time, right?
And we have 6 years. Well, it's all, I thought it was always clear, but I don't know. We were always insisting that this July 1st through June 30th timeframe is kind of weird to communicate to an average person looking at the website. But
you can do it how you need to do it on the website, because it, as Mark's pulled up, it's your active years. So if it goes by cohort year, if that's better for you, it's just when you're filling out the grids that you're referring to for the surveys, that's where you kind of might want to have a little qualifier, because it will look different than the website.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think Candy's really speaking about this from the perspective of just reviewing these items, and especially when our reviewers have this very complicated role of looking at the individual standards, but also look at the review, the program as a whole. So when they start seeing these student numbers other place in the self-study, and then they see on the outcomes that those numbers don't look the same, that creates some confusion, and that's where this explanation is really necessary. And like she correctly pointed out, right now the standard gives you a lot of flexibility how you want to put it on the website, as long as the last 3 active years are there. So there doesn't need to be a lot of explanation there, unless you just want to help describe the numbers to the public.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Okay, well, it's about a half an hour, which I think is a good time for this. As always, if you have questions after this, you know how to contact DLPs, you know how to contact staff. We have another one of these next month, which I believe is on, have already been announced in the NAACLS news. If you haven't checked out the NAACLS news in a while, it's going through a lot of changes. Give it another look. But we will be, if you have questions about volunteering in the past, becoming to be a volunteer, whether it's a self-study reviewer, site visitor, or committee or potential board of directors roles, that will be the main topic of next month. But as always, we will have a general Q&A. So check the NAACLS news for the actual date and time for that, because I don't have it off the top of my head. Other than that, thank you everybody for attending.
Thank you.